Okay. This is the regular meeting of the Bethany Board of Finance on February 11th, 2025. For the board, we have Sally Heiser, Martha Azarisi, Katie Erickson, Lars Demander, and me, Sharon Huxley. I'm the chair. In addition, we have our finance director, Leslie Butch-Galupi. We have our first selectman, Paula Francesco, and Jen Capasso, the selectman's assistant, all for the town of Bethany. And at this time from the Amity District, we have Dr. Byers, the superintendent, and Terry Loomis, the finance director for Region 5. And I will turn this over to you, Dr. Byers.
So I am going to send a request that I can get my screen shared.
We should.
Just allow, and then you can go back to your screen.
All right, let's see what happens.
Okay, you can go right back to your-
What's, I think it's behind. There it is.
There we go.
Okay,
Life is good.
great.
Let's keep it.
Okay, well, thank you very much for this opportunity to present. I do understand you have a very lengthy agenda, and so I am not going to give you the long version of the presentation, but we'll keep it as short and sweet as possible. So I always begin my presentations with a reminder that our work is actually guided in state statute. For regional school districts, we are required to prepare an estimate of what we believe the cost will be for running the district in the next school year. And I always use the direct language from the statute because the word estimate is actually very accurate. We are constantly dealing with moving targets in education, both in terms of student enrollment, student needs, but then also state funding that comes to us. And we typically start planning in about September. So essentially, almost 12 months before our kids even come in to start the school year. So we're really kind of, we're doing our best to make an educated prediction, but it is still a prediction and it has a lot of variability, both from the time we develop it until the time that we actually close it out. Our budget is grounded first in the Amity Board of Education mission and our goals, as well as the Bethany, Orange, Woodbridge, and Amity Portrait of the Graduate. That is our ultimate sort of product that we make, and we want to make sure that all of the work that we are doing, the requests that we make to our towns is in an effort to make sure that our students achieve our community's vision of what a graduate from Amity should be able to do. So like I said, we start the budgeting process in about September. Contractual obligations and federal and state mandates are essentially fixed costs for us. They probably are about like 95% of the budget. And so the part that is what I would call discretionary, the school and the department request, is a very small piece of the pie. We take all of that in, and from about October through December, we meet as an administrative team. We meet in individual meetings between Ms. Loomis and the principals and department chairs. And we really try to find places where we can be more efficient, where we can have some saving, where we might prioritize some programs, but it might come at the elimination of others, and where we try to reduce or combine redundancies, so that way we're able to use our resources more effectively. Ultimately, in about January, I start going out with my recommended budget, which is what we have right now. And so I will present that to AFC, the Amity Finance Committee, the Board of Education, and then to each of the town finance committees. Bethany is our last one that I am presenting at this point. The whole purpose of those presentations is to get feedback from our board members, our finance committee members, as well as from the towns themselves, because we know our budgets, they're kind of like these symbiotic organisms. If ours goes up, yours goes up. When ours goes down, yours does. And we know that there's other pieces of your budget that come into play at different points, and in different ways. Ultimately, the Amity Finance Committee approves a budget increase from the prior year, and then the Board of Ed approves what the budget is going to be. And those two approvals have to be the same. If they aren't, we go into sort of this back and forth process. And at the point that the board approves the budget, it stops being my budget and it becomes their budget. And then we move on to the process for referendum. So what's driving our budget? If you've already heard from Mrs. Bird, she's probably presented some of the same things. We do have contractual salary increases, healthcare costs, unfunded state mandates, and uncertain state revenue. We have some academic performance goals that we try to achieve every year. Costs in technology, pupil services, which is special education, personnel. Increasing enrollment isn't necessarily driving our budget, but it's not allowing us to drop our budget lower because we are getting more students in compared to current school year. And that's been a trend that we've seen for at least the past 2 years. And then my new one is the uncertain federal funding. And I'll talk a little bit about that, but this is really something that's only come into play, I would say, in the last 3 weeks, and just what the impact might be for us. So when we look at our contractual versus increases, our budget increases, the blue line represents the average wage increase. You may remember from my presentation last year, we are in the second year of a renegotiated teacher contract, and the trend that we saw then, which I think is continuing now, are higher wage increases for teachers, because we need to retain them. We want to make sure that they continue to work in our district and sort of across the state. What used to be maybe 2.5% on average is now kind of a little bit more than 4%. So we see that reflected. And then of course that gets translated down to our other bargaining units as well, who all had higher wage increases. The orange line is the budget ask, and we'll get into the details behind that. But I always say that when you think about how much our budget is driven by salaries and benefits, if our budget ask is lower than the wage increases, it means we're finding efficiencies in some of those other areas. Health insurance data, we are fortunate that we are self-insured. This means that we do benefit when claims are low. It also means we have to maintain a medical reserve. So if claims are high, we have a place that we can go and make sure that we are protected. We maintain a reserve of 18%. So we do work with consultants, and they categorize the reserve into a strong, moderate, or low category. You can see the 18% falls right between moderate and low. We feel confident in that decision. We've been at 18% for the past 3 years. Our medical expense line, really since the year after COVID, we've been typically right around 96 to 98% on target for the budget. So we've been fortunate, we haven't had but it is something that we pay attention to. The smaller your group is, the more a single claimant can really cause some fluctuation. And so we're attuned and sensitive to that. We do have some strategic priorities with respect to academic achievement. We do want to continue to support the comprehensive academic programming that Amity is known for. That means making sure we have strong classes in humanities and STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. We are increasing our number of AP and dual enrollment classes. The dual enrollment is really important because what it essentially means is a student can take a class at Amity. They're earning an Amity credit towards graduation, but they're also earning college credits that can transfer. That's a direct benefit to our parents and kids, because then they don't have to pay for as many credits to successfully complete a college degree. We want to make intervention supports for students who are struggling, and that we have really a broad range of classes in kind of all the other areas, the arts, our tech ed programs, world language, and health and PE. Specifically, this budget does request support for our Spartan Academy in math. Spartan Academy is our alternative education program. So it is a program for students, regular education students, who are not necessarily able to succeed in kind of the larger environment of 1,400 kids in the high school. So they currently have English and social studies instruction as part of Spartan Academy. And we'd like to add math, which would kind of round out most of their core academic classes. The other thing that we are looking to do is add a teacher for the our multi-language learners. So these are students who come to us speaking another language. And English is their second language, or sometimes when they come to us, not their language at all. We have really seen a shift in this population. So in the past 3 years, more than double. In 2021, we had 17 multi-language students. As of today, we have about 44. So we are definitely seeing a shift in that enrollment, and a multi-language teacher is actually a specialized teaching certification, because how you teach older kids to speak English while they're in the middle of all their high school classes is a really unique skill. It's different from just being an English teacher. So we would like to add support for those students. We want to continue to address our chronic absenteeism. This, of course, was the net effect of COVID, and we had some really high percentages of students who are chronically absent. We did hire a school engagement specialist with federal funding, and it's been a drawdown grant. So we've been slowly increasing that over the past 3 years. We've seen our chronic absenteeism drop. We're now pretty comparable to what I see at the elementary districts, although none of us, I believe, have really returned to pre-COVID levels. So it still continues to be an area of concern. We have major curriculum revisions underway in social studies, math, science, and world language, as well as some electives. We want to make sure we have assessment data and resources to help our students who are performing below grade level, so that we know how to teach them effectively. And then we are currently about to start a grade 11 portrait of the graduate portfolio assessment, which is a required half graduation credit. It'll actually happen this April for our 11th graders. And as we've been building this program, we've recognized we need some more stipends to support our students so that they are successful and earn that half credit. We also want to continue our support for athletics and the arts, our one-to-one student device program, a technology supported learning environment. We need textbooks and instructional resources, and then of course facilities on both an annual basis and in a 5-year capital plan. Just because pupil services is a fairly significant part of our budget, as is in most school budgets. We just have some fixed costs that are associated with special education. Transportation goes up anywhere from about 2.5% to 8%. Our tuition at out of district placements is increasing anywhere from about 2 to say 7.5%. And then our salaries, again, these are contractual, are anywhere between 2.5% to 4.5%. And keep in mind too, special ed is a mandate, so it's not an option as to whether or not we offer it. We also have some changes. So we have 2 rising students. One is outplaced, so we have to automatically for that student. The other is a student with some really unique healthcare needs, and so they require a very specialized support structure of a nurse who also serves as a paraeducator. I don't know which elementary districts those students are coming from. We need RBTs, which are behavioral technicians, to help our students learn when they're struggling with their behaviors. McKinney-Vento is the law that guides us in how we address homeless students, and we have seen an increase in the number of homeless students that we're having to support. And primarily that is that amount of money is for transportation, because essentially what McKinney-Vento says is that when a child becomes homeless, they still get to go to school in the district where they were going to school when they became homeless. The idea being this kid's life has already been disrupted enough by their family becoming homeless. We're not going to disrupt them more by making them change schools. And so we've just seen an increase in that population and need more funding to meet their needs. And then finally, we always have some legal costs that we incur on an annual basis. There's the pie chart that sort of talks about some of what I've already mentioned. The blue and the red are the salaries and benefits, so it's basically about 2/3 of our pie chart, the most significant piece being our staffing, followed kind of right behind it in the green with special education. Purchase services, and everybody that as a regional school district, we have to enter into contracts for services that local school districts don't always have to do. For example, snow plowing, we need to hire a snow plowing contractor because we don't have a town public works that comes around and does snow plowing. Same with our grounds maintenance. We don't have anybody who can come around and mow our fields or trim our trees, and so we have to have a contractor for our grounds maintenance. We also have debt service, which debt service is gonna be unique to a regional school district. Local schools won't carry debt service because the town will carry that debt service on their behalf. So that's another piece of the pie that would be unique to an Amity budget. We have a couple unfunded state mandates that are having an impact on us this year, but now we're trying to figure out how to budget for them next year. The first is the Connecticut Paid Sick Leave Act, which essentially guarantees 40 hours of paid sick leave, pretty much to anybody in the state of Connecticut. There's a couple little opt-outs, but not very many. Most of our bargaining unit contracts actually have very generous sick leave provisions, but we do have a handful of people who did not have paid sick leave that we are now obligated to provide the paid sick leave for. The other sort of side to that is, unlike perhaps somebody in a private sector or somebody who just doesn't work in a school, when somebody is out, I have to still fill their position. I can't have an intervention specialist not in the classroom that day if the kids are expected to go to the intervention specialist, because we have to provide supervision for our students. So the cost with the paid sick leave is both the sick time, but also the substitute who now has to cover for that person who is going to be out. So that's something that we're trying to sort of wrap our heads around and try to figure out what the actual cost is, since it just went into effect on January 1st. The other is the expansion of FMLA, which is family medical leave. It essentially lowered the threshold to 950 hours, and then somebody earns it. What was happening before is because our school staff, our 10-month staff only work 180 days. And their school day is like about 6.5 hours. They weren't actually meeting the threshold to qualify for family medical leave. Now they do. And so that adds to the additional leave that we have to be able to provide support for. And then finally, there is a new school climate policy and bullying complaint process that I believe we're going to be able to manage with existing staff, but the things that we have to do in response to our school climate may have some additional costs that we have to incur. And that by statute goes into effect on July 1, 2025. We also have uncertainty in state revenue. So excess cost is the money we get from the state if a special education student, if their placement costs sort of more than a threshold. And when we built the current year budget, so the 24-25 budget, we estimated at that time that our excess cost was going to be around 67%, which is low. It's probably the lowest we've seen in a while. As of today, that excess cost is about 59%. In the governor's proposed budget for next year, there's been no change in his excess cost. And so if we were to apply that for next year, it's going to drop pretty much near 50% or below. So this is one of those moving targets, and this is a lot of money. And excess cost, it's been, I don't know that it's ever gone up. It's just always, it keeps dropping every single year. And of course, it's again tied to special education. We are obligated to provide for these students a free and appropriate educational placement, and we just get less money for it, which of course then turns around and we have to budget, we have to make sure that still pay for it through town allocations. The other thing that's changing is education cost sharing. This doesn't come to Amity. ECS goes directly to the towns. But I also know that there's reductions in ECS. Some of it driven by the budgets, but also by enrollment. I know that Bethany's ECS allocation did go down, as did Orange's. Woodbridge's actually went up because of their enrollment shifts that you'll see in a minute here. The last is that we currently are operating under a cap for our magnet and agricultural science tuition. So basically, it was written into law that local districts would only have to pay 58% of the tuition, and the state was taking care of the rest. That's still in law. What is uncertain is in the budgets going forward, whether the rest of the money is actually there. So we have currently budgeted at 100%, that we have to pay all the tuition. This is something Ms. Loomis and I are going to continue to work on over the next couple of weeks. Now that the governor's budget is out, and now that we know that the lawmakers are starting to think about their budget, we want to make sure and to see that that money is actually in there, and then we would feel confident about looking at a reduction potentially in this account. Our debt service is going down, and so that's the actual really good news. So the part that's highlighted is actually next year, so that you can see the change in the debt service between the current fiscal year and in the budget year that we're presenting right now. That's about what, 2.3% of a decrease. And with the debt service going down, we are looking at the potential for a bond referendum coming up in 2027. And so I let you know that because if you were ever thinking about potential bond referendums, you know, we obviously don't want to try to do this all at the same time. This one is, you'll see, really focused as of right now on the middle school, replacing the roofs, the HVAC system, the lights that basically are in the gym that turn the gym into essentially a stage for our concerts and for our musicals and whatnot. Some upgrades to our fields to bring them up to a higher standard, and then painting the exterior. And then the pump house at the middle school in Bethany. First of all, we have a pump house because we have a well. The pump house needs to be replaced. So we're currently in the process of doing the study for how we replace it. And then once we have that information, we actually have to go through the process of replacing it. The TBD is the placeholder for the things that we are fairly certain the high school is going to need. We just haven't spent as much time looking at the high school needs as part of this bond. But we are looking probably at least a $20 million bond for these projects.
And these are, you mentioned middle school, which middle school, all of
Both of them, yes.
Okay.
So we're both updated at the
Both
same time.
They were updated at the same time, they're all breaking at the same time,
Yeah.
yes. We also still have the option, if we have unspent funds at the end of a fiscal year, we can set that aside into a reserve fund for educational expenses. That is the fund where we are continuing to make plans to renovate the libraries. Starting with the high school, which is actually on the priority list for school construction grants for the current budget year. And if we get that, we would have the seed money to potentially consider some renovations to the libraries at the middle schools. We just sort of remind everybody that that is also an option for us if we do have those unspent funds. So initially, our budget request came in at 4.3% above the current year budget. Like I said, we spend most of October, November, and December trying to sort of peel and parse away at that, even January. When I presented to the board, I think in December, it was 3.82. When I went before Amity Finance Committee, it was 3.66. When I went to the Amity Finance Committee again, we got down to 3.16, and that's kind of where we sit as of today. What the budget supports, like I said, it's continuing to support athletics, academics, and the arts, the Spartan Academy math, the Portrait of the Graduate portfolio credit. It's student activities, particularly our musical productions at both the middle and high school level, some field trip expenses, a middle school late bus. So right now our middle schools run a late bus on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so the kids can stay after and do clubs and get extra help We'd like to add a late bus on a Wednesday so that they just have more opportunities to stay after school and participate in extracurricular activities. It meets technology needs for teacher devices, replacements of things kind of like your fancy TV here, as well as our technology infrastructure. It supports curriculum and instruction, professional development for teachers, a teacher evaluation platform that's aligned to a new teacher evaluation system we had to adopt this year. The multi-language learner teacher, the school engagement specialist, as well as those facilities improvements. The last thing I want to just talk about is the uncertain federal revenue. So we do get a significant amount of money from the federal government through the Department of Education. The title grants, there's 4 of those, and they attribute to about $110,000. The school lunch program is actually a fairly sizable grant, almost $275,000. Perkins is unique to high schools. It supports our CTE program, and a lot of times we will purchase sort of the unique equipment and instruments that we use in our CTE classes that an operational budget normally wouldn't be able to fund. And then the biggest is the IDEA grant, which supports special education. So all told, it's about $902,000 that we get from the federal government. If we were to not receive this money, we do not maintain a fund balance, so there is no place for us to go to make up this money. We would have to go back out to referendum to ask the town's tax voters to approve additional money allocations for us. I think the other concern is, like I said, all of this is managed through the Department of Education. So it is unclear, if there is no Department of Education, how this money actually gets to us. So even if they say, well, we're still going to get you the money, which is great, and that has been indicated at times, it's not really clear if the mechanism for getting it to us isn't there, how it actually happens. And so this is kind of sort of the big question that we're operating under right now. Our ADM is how we sort of calculate the actual budget allocations. You can see that our enrollment is going up. Bethany has a very modest increase of 2 students. Orange actually has a decrease, but it's really Woodbridge that is seeing the biggest shift in enrollment changes, and it's impacting their budget allocation. So ultimately, as of February 10th, with a total 3.16% budget increase, you can see that for Bethany, it's about a $169,000 increase from the current school year. When you look at the 3.16% request, and you just kind of compare it, overall, the average superintendent budgets in Connecticut is about 5.59%. If you just look at DIRG B, which would be school districts similar to us, the average superintendent request is 5.15%. And then at my last presentation, somebody questioned, well, because you're losing debt service, wouldn't you look odd compared to regional school districts? And you can see that regional school districts, which come from a whole bunch of different DIRGs, their average is 5.06%. So pretty much across the board, the request is sort of on the low end of the ranges and certainly below the average that we see across the state, no matter how you kind of look at it. So obviously I'm here tonight on February 11th. The most important meetings are highlighted in red. On February 24th, the AFC should make a recommendation to the Board of Education with respect to the budget. On March 10th, the board should recommend their budget and adopt it, so that way we can go forward to a referendum on May 6th. So thank you for your time. Thank you for supporting Amity, and I'm happy to answer questions.
So I have a question related to the debt service issue. The reduction in the debt service provides 1.3 million
Yes,
for your operating budget
yes,
this year, for next year, plus another, 1.7. So it ends up being an actual increase in operating expenses of 3 million,
yes,
a little over 3 million.
Yes.
Right? Okay. What,
which is like around 5%. So it kind of puts us right into that average of where all the other school districts are sort of
What
landing.
I'm concerned about is that 2 years from now, you're talking about a bond issue that's going to generate more debt service, which is going to add all by itself, at least that much into the operating budget, but you're using that money for operations now instead of banking it, putting it into your capital reserve. You're using it for operations, so you're actually increasing your operating expenditures by
Yes.
$3 million.
Yes, I mean, and when you figure we're adding 2 teachers, so, and, you know, and then we do have, and we knew, and we talked about this. Because we saw it, I mean, we've always seen the debt service decline. We knew that when we got into negotiating the higher teacher contracts, it's what allows us to have those higher increases and still have a budget request that's below the contractual increases. So we were fortunate that our debt service went in the direction it did at the point in time when teacher contracts went in the direction that they did.
But your debt service schedule is decreasing,
Yes.
so there isn't going to be that kind of subsidy for.
I
Less,
don't
there will
see it
be
as a
less.
subsidy.
Well, I would consider it a subsidy because it's something that it's a huge dollar amount that you're not paying, and you're supporting other expenditures, so I would
An
consider,
offset maybe.
okay. So,
Is that like what you're trying to say? I
Yes,
understand what you're saying, yeah.
yeah, my concern is that that therefore, the overall level of the budget is actually going to be, as any debt service that's being released next year, what'll happen is that you'll automatically have to increase the operating budget more because you won't have anything going away. I'm concerned about that, and I'm also concerned about a discussion that I had with you, I think 2 years ago, when we were talking about the level of the budget. And exactly this about debt service, releasing funds for the operating budget. And I said, well, what are you going to do about bonding? And he said, I can't see us needing to do any bonding for at least 10 years. And here we are, 2 years later.
And contracts will be coming up that same year. If
Yes,
they're in the second year.
Yeah.
Well, it's a 3-year contract, so in 2 years, you're gonna do salary negotiations again with a bond. So that's going to
that's gonna
impact
be scary.
substantially.
No matter when we do a bond, there's going to be salary increases.
Mm.
We don't know when we do the next round. Whether those rates will be trending, we may be back to our 2.5%, 3% range increase, not a 4.5%. There were other districts that, probably what, 12 districts that went before us when we had negotiated, and that kind of set the trend in the state. So we'll have an idea of like where the trend is going, but I don't know if it's gonna stay at 4.5%. This is unusual. I've never seen these kind of increases. So it is the trend right now, but I don't know what the trend will be in 2 years.
I'm concerned about where the money's gonna come from. Because obviously it's going to come from us.
Well, and there are some things that. There are operational expenses that we have because we are constantly addressing things that are broken. That if you put a bond in, sometimes you don't have to have those same operational expenses. So I think that there are places within the budget that there can be some shifts and things. I'm just thinking of, leaking roofs and the things that we have to do to kind of take care of those and address those needs versus the benefit of replacing a roof and having a new roof and in theory, no more leaks. But
I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just pointing out that we're kind of between a rock and a hard place. And I also understand that you are because of the unfunded mandates and the extension of the special education into students that are past high school age, let's say. But nevertheless, you still have to. Do you have to do that for 12 months of the year?
yes. So, yes,
Mhm. And without any additional funding, if I remember correctly.
Correct, yes.
So, that's why I was,
Go.
Ranger, sorry. One thing that's come up in discussion a lot with this board, and certainly since I've been a member of it, is the surpluses that you generate. And I do understand that you don't have a mechanism of general fund. So every year you sort of have approximately $2 to $3 million surplus. Maybe the ballpark is off, but it's every year and it seems slightly intentional. And perhaps it is. So, in general, I feel like there's a little bit of a lack of transparency in your budget. You intentionally budget for a surplus.
No, we don't.
And yet every year you have one, approximately the same amount,
Mhm.
and at least 2% every year. So it's every, so those, those, it can't happen every year for it to be
You're right, I can.
unintentional. So somehow some magic is happening that's not being presented to us and to the public, yet it's happening every year with consistency. So, I think we would be more supportive and less skeptical if there was more transparency there. And we understand the constraints of not having general fund and not having a contingency. And you even mentioned today that I have to come back to the, for referendum, and we understand that, we understand that's a restriction. So I would like you to think about when you're presenting your budget and when you're creating your budget on a year-over-year basis to show more transparency there, actually show what your increase is to your actual. Increases without surplus so that we can see that information because it's not a true picture of the increases that you're actually incurring. If you have a $2 million surplus or something like that every year, and you're talking about a budget to previous budget, we should be budgeting to actual. And so that's information that's not distributed widely. I've got to dig to find it and I've got to make my own little tables, and I don't think that's, I don't think it's
Page, it's on that chart, the actual from the prior year is shown.
okay.
And, you know, and again, and I can say it, people can choose to believe me or not. We do not budget with 2% of money tucked and hidden away someplace.
Yeah,
If at the end of the year, there's not 2% left, if at the end of the year, there's $40 left and that's all we have. We are not setting, well, we might set aside $40 into our reserve account, but everything that we have always looked at, to improve in our schools, using those reserve funds has always been things that I could have waited on if, and have ultimately gone out to bond for. It's not built in that we intentionally have that money set aside each year. The other thing is, you mentioned contingency. We actually do include contingencies in our budget because we don't have anything, and there are years when we don't actually use our contingency funds. That's a good thing. It's a good thing, though, except that it ends up going as part of our unspent funds. But we do budget $150,000 for general, 150, 100 for facilities. And we now have 100,000 set aside for technology because our infrastructure is end of life. And if we lose a server or switches, we won't be able to operate. So we do actually include contingency as part of the budget, which sometimes doesn't get used.
yeah, I hear what you're saying, but the probabilities of running consistent surplus year over year.
We have some very volatile areas, special education is very volatile, whether students move out of the district that we were planning on educating, and if they move out, we don't have those costs. That could happen before the school year starts, it could happen in the middle of the year. Being self-insured is very volatile. We work with an insurance consultant every year and start with, what do you think our claims are gonna be? They work with Anthem, they look at our history, but in the end, the claims are what the claims are. I don't control those.
So, understand what you're saying, and, it sounds like you've mentioned several volatile items in your budget. And you still, and I do so much budgeting for my job, so I get it, like, it sounds like then you're erring on the conservative side when you're creating a budget, being prudent. And so, if you consistently put in the conservative side of conservative estimate for all the volatile items. And the actuals fall where they do, then you're preparing to have a surplus every year.
Well, when it comes to students, I can't just assume that a kid is going to leave. So I have to actually budget for all the students.
I do understand.
I would
just
say
feel
that
there's-
we are not conservative when you look at our reserve medical fund. We're actually on the low end of
I
that.
saw
And
that,
again, so that I do think that having $100,000 set aside for a facilities contingency. I mean, could be one boiler and that's it. So it sounds like a lot of money, but from the things that we operate in our school, it's still on the conservative end. We do assume that we are always fully staffed because we actually don't have an option not to be. But for example, when my assistant superintendent left the district at the end of November, I didn't have one start until February because of the way contracts work in the state. So we get these gaps, but I still needed somebody to do the work that Mr. Carr wasn't doing. And so sometimes that comes with cost and sometimes it just comes with additional work with nobody getting paid for it. And we have seen that sort of volatility
Yeah.
really increase since COVID, particularly in the employment sector.
High turnover in staff. You'll see there's data in the back of the book that really does go through each year and where the surplus was generated from. And there's some years where salary was a big part of it. We would average typically 5 retirements, and there were years where we were well over 5. Now this year, we know of one, that person who has submitted their retirement. So maybe that trend is changing, but we do budget that there will be a savings there on 5 retirements and resignations. So we try to, offset a contingency by saying there will be some savings. So it is not, but that also is an area that I don't know what the employment trend will be. We cannot hire enough paraeducators. I mean, we're probably, 3 to 4 down all year long. So we have to go to an outside agency. So you might save on health benefits because you're not employing these people, or there's caps in employment.
Yeah. No, I understand, and I understand also in the corporate world, I might assume an HR at 80% or something like, whereas you're assuming it at 100%, and so like, I just think there's improvements for transparency. That's
So
That's the
can you
message
tell
I'm
me
getting.
what you would like us to be more transparent on? Just give me one example.
staffing would be one, like.
So what would you wanna know? Any stuff we have, because we have that in there.
Yeah.
We, at the end of the year, we talk about how much you can see it in our monthly reports, what we're paying for certified salaries, what we're paying for non-certified salaries, and where that is in terms of alignment with what we budgeted. That's part of our financial report every month.
Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying, but I mean.
Actually, I think it's the budget to the actual. I think the increase to the prior year's actual would be very meaningful. And I understand you don't have that quite yet because there's a lag in how your actuals are reported.
Right.
However, you could do it 2 years back, or there's gotta be a way to creatively do it.
And I don't know, and Miss Loomis, you can help me, but does anybody budget prior, like actual?
The comparison is always budget to budget.
Yes,
Everybody
I
looks
understand.
at their actual.
Yeah.
To me, well, that is what part of our initial budget process is. We provide all of our department heads are requesting
Yes.
money. What did you spend over the last 3 years? Not just 1 year.
Mm.
What did you spend over the last 3 years? What have you spent year to date when you're developing your budget? And then once they submit it, I do comparisons to see if you haven't been spending your budget, what is the reason, and can we reduce that? So we clearly are looking at actuals.
and there are dues and fees. There's the one area I remember that we make. Like I just presented, because people just aren't spending the money on the dues to join organizations and the fees that are associated with that. And so we made reductions there because we could see consistent patterns from actuals that we didn't need the money.
And I think that 2 years ago, we kind of had the discussion that it is not necessary to budget fully for every line. That because you do have the ability to make transfers during the year and to budget every single line at the maximum is a significant reason why we see these very large surpluses.
It's budgeted at what we estimate we are going to need. So if
Each
you think of
individual.
just instructional supplies for CTE classes, we estimate what we think we're going to need for wood,
Right.
metal, food. And we either spend it or sometimes we don't. And I will say, and again, it's a culture that is embedded in the Amity staff, that they will do anything they can to get a deal. And it's almost like, because it ends up in savings, it's like, why are you bothering? Because then we just get criticized for not being transparent and having money left over, but it's part of what they do. And so they just find, I mean, they find stuff, they'll buy recycled items that they know they can use again, they'll go out to other schools and get things from other schools, instead of spending all the money that they asked for.
And
But
that's
that's what they
that's a
estimated.
good thing, but meanwhile, if you're on our end, we have had to tax our people for all of it. Regardless of whether you collect it all or use it all, we have had to tax our taxpayers for it. This is where we're caught. I'm not gonna say it's a dilemma, it's very difficult for us to have to say, you know, you have to pay for this, even though we're pretty sure, as Katie said, in the end, it works out near close to $2 million a year, that it was not necessary to appropriate. But people had to be taxed for it.
I think we should move on, just to make sure,
Yes.
just because we have a really big agenda, so,
Yes.
um.
Yeah.
So I guess,
This is,
again, questions about the
Yeah.
budget or?
Anyone? Question, additional, Barbara, anything?
No, I didn't know if that's Spartan Academy, now, do the teachers like recommend students to that?
Yes, so we have
Okay.
a process where they actually go through what we call an intake, and so it's a team of teachers. Sometimes parents can ask for it, sometimes the kids ask for it themselves or advocate, but then they still have to go through an intake process to determine if it's gonna be program successful for them.
And then those kids transfer over to the high school in the same
So
program?
Spartan Academy, actually, it is part of the high school. It's a small wing that's sort of self-contained, smaller classrooms, smaller class sizes. They'll go out into like science classes we can't really offer in there because you need some pretty specific lab space to do science. So there's certain classes that they will go out into the general population to have, but to the extent we can support them in the smaller learning environment, we try.
Oh, that's interesting. Then they stay in school.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And graduate.
Yes.
We hope you do a wonderful job.
Yeah.
And the physical plant is amazing. Okay, thank you
Yeah, thank you.
again for your time and for the presentation. And, I don't know. Andrea, did you have any questions or you're just hanging?
My moral support.
Okay. All right. We don't bite, we just ask questions. The next item on our agenda is public comment. So, there are no members of the public physically present. Is there anyone online who has a comment or question? You have 3 minutes if you do. Raise your hand. Seeing none, we will move on. The next item on our agenda is, and I do see that we have our assessor online, there is a submission from Elm City Trailers Mr. Pantarella for the tax abatement program. And we've done some of these before, you may be familiar with them. The assessor provided us with information. Betsy, would you like to walk people through, or does everyone remember how this works? Based on what he's submitted and the categories we can provide within limits, how many years and what percentage of an abatement?
Yes,
Right.
that's what she did, okay.
Um,
She's on twice, but she unmuted
Is she
under
there?
assessor.
Can you hear me?
But
Yes,
ah,
we
there
did.
you are.
I,
Okay, yes.
hold on. I'm gonna mute my computer and talk to you through my phone.
Okay,
Does that work okay?
Sure.
sure.
You can hear me, okay. So you have a copy of the application from Elm City Trailer. Presently, we have. Should I? Wait a minute.
You're good, you're good.
Okay. Presently, we have two existing incentive programs, one at 153 Amity Road. They're getting 25% for 3 years. That is the storage facility owned by Grieger.
Mhm.
We have 9 Russell, which is Greenlight, and they're getting 30% per year. And I believe that you have the ability to go anywhere from 0 to 30% for 1 to 3 years. I gave some statistics. They did increase in their assessment for the real estate by $100,000 and 100,000 pretty much. And their personal property was $118,000 of added income to our grant list.
And he said 7 employees?
He stated that on his personal property declaration, he has 7 employees.
Okay. Do you have a recommendation for us, or are you just going to provide the facts and then, well, I think we're sort of a joint committee, aren't we?
Yeah, it's a new business. We hope it's successful. He moved in from Woodbridge, so you stole a neighboring town's businesses. Um, and I believe that he's here to stay for a while.
Just so you know.
And he did talk to me about how cyclical the business is. So obviously they are much more in the nicer weather, and the winter isn't so much. So, you know, any type of help he could receive, he would be greatly appreciative.
He had sent me an email on February 4th saying that he had hired 2 more people. Now, I don't know if that's included in the number that's in the packet or if it's in addition to the number that's listed there. But he also said that he would be hiring a couple of Amity kids for their work study program and for summer help.
Oh, that's great.
He also mentioned that he still has to finish the landscaping on the outer parts, you know, with
Yeah.
63. And he will be having the grand opening and open house on March 7th and 8th. Just as an FYI.
Okay. They've obviously been very, very busy there, and they've.
And he's an Amity grad.
Okay. Does anyone want to make a recommendation? We have 2 existing out there, one at 25%, one at 30%. We can go between 0 and 30, and for 1 to 3 years. We want to encourage.
You can also do it in a decreasing manner or an increasing manner as well.
Oh, that's right. We did.
Like 30, 20, 10 or something like that.
And, do we, I know you gave us all of the declarations, and do you off the top of your head have an idea what percentage of it is the real estate and what percent is the personal property? And does it matter? It doesn't
Well,
really
he
matter.
gave,
He gave us a
so
lot.
his percentage of the increase of the real estate
Mhm.
was about 40%.
Okay.
And his personal property is brand new, so it's obviously 100%.
Okay. Mhm. I like the idea of encouraging him.
Mhm.
Yeah, I do too.
There was nothing there before.
There was nothing there before, the land was not being used.
Yeah, but that was the old Uniroyal site, which was,
Yeah.
what do they
Problematic,
call it?
super fund,
A
Tight.
something fun site?
yes. Brownfield kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's brought in a use that what he's doing is sealing over a significant portion of it, so. All right, first, rate and then time period.
My question was, what were we getting, in terms of revenue before he moved in?
Nothing.
Nothing. There was,
Well, I don't know. Betsy, can you tell us how much?
The whole
Uniroyal-
site combined, the two parcels, was 166,000. I mean, excuse me, 139,000. So he
So
took
he's-
the 139 remains on the 90 Amity Road, which is where he is still trying to improve it as a parking lot.
Mhm.
And then the improvement that he made was really to the 74 Amity, which was the building and that parking lot. So the increase was basically 200 and, well, it's $100,000. Yeah.
Oh, page 2 of the application gives us 140 of improvement to real estate and 50 for personal property. That's like 200.
Correct.
Okay.
But that might be what he paid out of pocket, but that's, I'm talking assessments. So that's
Oh,
70%.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do the easy one. How many years?
I think we should do 3 years.
3 years.
And I just like the decreasing, I like that idea, so that you can have a more immediate support to
Yes.
this year to,
Mhm.
to like
Okay.
decrease his costs. I
And
thought that was a good idea.
Then you like the idea of decreasing,
Yeah.
decreasing? Okay, start with
30.
30.
Start with 30 for the first year, and then
I like 25, 20.
Yeah, that's good. I agree. with
25,
that.
20. Okay. Sally, don't leave. We need to.
Hello?
Okay.
I can live with that.
Yeah.
All right. Would somebody like to make that motion for 3 years and that at 30% the first year, 25 the second year, and 20 the third year?
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay. So for Jen Savage, Lars made it and Martha seconded it. Sally, we're discussing 3 years,
Right.
30%, 25 and 20. Okay, the motions.
Those were my thoughts.
Okay, so hearing
Could you
no.
clarify that motion?
In
If
what
it's for
way?
Real estate, personal property, or both?
Oh,
Oh,
both,
Both.
Say both.
Yeah.
Be
both, for both. Yes. So is that an acceptable? Modification to the motion? If it's okay with you, then.
Yeah.
Just, all
Yeah.
right, so that's accepted by the maker of the motion. So all in favor?
You're recommending it back to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, all right, what we are recommending is, do you have that?
I did,
You have
3 years, first year 30, second year 25, third year 20,
Planning.
and then that's both for real estate and personal property.
Yes,
Yes.
okay. All
Because
right,
then I will work with the attorney to make up the
All
proper
right.
documentation.
okay. All right, so thank you, Betsy. I think we've.
And
done-
are you recommending, could you give me an idea of what grand list year you're recommending it to start on?
Oh, okay,
Wouldn't
so
it start on the next year?
next year, or do we
This
back
is
it
his
up?
first grand list year.
This is his first year?
So has he paid taxes yet?
No, but they've
He has
already
not.
assessed the property. Okay, so you're asking, would this be backward looking to last October? Do I have that right? Yes, the grand
I
list.
believe it does say the following grand list.
The following grand list, okay,
So
then,
25?
Then-
October 25.
then October 25. We're good with that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, do we
Perfect.
have to do, is there anything else we need to do with that?
I think so.
Okay,
You're recommending it back to the Board of Selectmen, who will approve it and then
Yeah.
do the necessary documentation.
yes. Okay, we're done. All right, thank you, Betsy. Now we are done, I think, with that, right?
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, next, the minutes of the last meeting.
Ask Betsy to go on mute.
I'm going to, I just muted her.
Oh, she just
Oh,
left. it.
she's leaving off of both things, so.
Mhm. Okay. Next, the minutes of the January meeting.
Yes, I move to approve.
Okay,
I'll
thank you.
second.
All right, so, Jen, that was Katie making the motion and Sally seconding. Any discussion? One, two, going. Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Okay.
because you weren't, yeah. So Jen, voting for Huxley, Heiser, Azarisi, and Erickson, and abstaining is Demander because he was not present. He's still there, right? Yes. Where are we? Next, the finance director's report.
The numbers as of January 31 for both expenses and revenue are in front of you, as well as the updated. I would prefer not to go into detail on all of them unless someone has a question. I'm happy to answer questions. But I don't want to. Given how much more we have to accomplish tonight, I would prefer not to. Go through department by department, line by line on current expenses. Unless you have a question.
Well, we're going to have to schedule a budget workshop, so
Yep.
I would
That's coming up
suggest that we postpone a deep dive until that
Mhm.
meeting, and we all take the opportunity to look. She did provide us with both revenue and expenses and the budget, the latest draft budget. So, and just don't let us adjourn without scheduling that meeting. Actually, Katie, you're gonna have to leave us before 8:30. Should we then schedule that meeting now? Before we.
Might as well.
Okay, we're going to need several hours. Whether we like it or not. Yep. And it should be fairly soon, unfortunately, because we're probably, as you all know, going to have more than one of these meetings. So we know that Wednesdays do not work for Katie, Thursdays do not work for Sally, Mondays don't work for Lars.
Wednesdays,
You're what?
I can do Wednesdays in general.
Next
Oh, you
week,
can't.
school's
Oh.
off, so there might be a
Oh,
lot
right.
of activities not happening.
Okay, Martha, you had, was it you who had Wednesdays?
Yeah, Wednesday, so, I mean, I'm looking at, is how about a week from today, is that possible?
This room is used next Wednesday, just so you know.
Excuse me?
This room is used next Wednesday, just so you know, so if you have it.
We're
you
talking
have
about
to-
Tuesday.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said.
No,
Wednesday.
no,
I
yeah, yeah.
apologize.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, next Tuesday's fine with me.
okay, Sally?
As of now, yes, I don't know whether the activities happen or not, but yeah.
Okay,
Same, I don't know if the activities are happening next week.
well, we'll be doing a workshop, so we can do it hybrid. And we'll, if
What
we
time are
have,
we starting at?
I don't know, we have to,
We haven't got
we've
that.
only just set the date.
But the date might depend on the time.
Okay, what kind of time? And
You said we're gonna need a couple hours,
at least,
at least a couple hours.
we have a lot to go through.
I know that.
Because if you
So-
looked at the total increases.
Do we want the 4:30 time again? Oh, look at that face.
Oh, I don't care, but I just felt badly for everybody having to try. Even
Well,
try,
then we get home earlier.
Hmm?
you would get
Mm,
home
yeah, we get
earlier,
home
but
earlier.
what about starting at 6? And with an absolute cutoff at between 8:30 and 9. How does that work?
Yeah,
It works for me.
that's fine.
Okay, 6.
Okay, so workshop next week, 6 to 8:30, 9 at the worst. And then we will just. Please, everybody, look through, at this point, I think everybody has all the information you're gonna have. Look at what's in there for the revenues, take the revenue numbers with a grain of salt, because. Right?
Well, I
And-
realize now why, registrar didn't attend. I heard this morning that the governor's proposing a 50% cut in, early voting.
Oh,
money.
thank goodness.
No, not the days,
The
the money
money.
funding it.
Oh, crap.
50%,
It was
yeah,
in the newspaper, yeah.
yeah.
He's proposing 50%
Unfunded
less funding for
mandates.
early voting.
Well, the federal government might say no at all. You just never know what they're gonna
Maybe
do.
they'll change the
Well-
number of days.
I know, I really feel for the schools who have both state and federal grants, although I feel for us too, because we get,
Mhm.
we've got a whole bunch we're not getting to. All right, anyway, so it would be ideal, since everyone has all the stuff,
Mhm.
to come in, mark up your paperwork and everything, and we'll talk. We may find that there are some department heads that we'll want to talk to again, or whatever.
Karen, I did find someone to pick up my son, so I can.
Oh, tonight?
Yes.
Oh, all right.
Excellent.
So this is all.
Okay, the
correct numbers?
that's where I was going to go, the
Yeah.
documents that you will need for that workshop next week. The item number 63A,
Mhm,
which is the complete budget, it is the summary.
mhm.
And every department, with the exception of registrars, because there was not a budget submitted by them.
Okay.
I have also added as much revenue on the back documentation that I could on the back of it, as well as the extra handout that I gave you tonight, which is the consolidated revenue sheet, which is the 1 page, and then the legal paper that you have is the last 3 years budget to actual. No, it's revenue and expenses.
Oh,
That is
oh,
every line. So that is,
the one that's page 1 of 8. This
yes,
is-
1 of
this
8.
would be
It's
a
the last
complete
3
budget.
years.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And where was the single page?
It's on, well, it's this it's this one here.
It's right in front of you.
It's this one here.
Oh, this.
All right. And also,
Revenue here?
Yes, that is yes, the single sheet is the revenue.
On the back of it.
It just shows the 25 budget, the 25 revenue budget. And the proposed 26. That report I cannot I cannot print out with the year over year analysis like I can on the expenses with this software system.
Dude, you picked your preferences.
No, I didn't.
Oh, I found.
It's the old one.
Everyone blames the person before for picking software that was inadequate. We've gone through like.
All right, and
Yes.
and then I also provided you with the unedited, unreviewed budget workshop notes that Jen Verbanek took. They will be added to our agenda in March for official adoption after Sharon and I had the opportunity to review them for edit purposes. But I thought that the information might prove helpful for you in reviewing the entire packet so that we can make some
But this is,
logical, hard decisions.
this is the
next week.
first one. We don't have the next two.
Oh, well, I missed it. I laid that to the side.
Yeah, do we have the other ones?
What?
Meetings?
I think it's all combined. There's.
They're all there.
Oh, yeah,
All
they
three,
are.
all
It
three of the,
goes through
all three of the
February
workshops
6th.
are there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, they're all there.
Okay,
And we thank her.
Yeah, this is useful.
okay, there's February 6th.
Yeah, I just front to back to everything,
That's
so,
fine. I
you know,
just-
they're anywhere from 3 to 5 pages each.
Okay. All right, so,
Okay.
um,
I will inform my other board that I cannot attend their meeting next week. Tuesday night, I have a commitment every Tuesday of the month, but I have the grace of being allowed out twice a year, so this is one of my 2 outs for the year.
Okay, so these are the notes.
This budget has to take priority, so.
And do we have
About salaries.
capital?
Conversation about.
a list of capitals?
yes.
They should be included in the big
We
budget
got
part,
them last week.
Okay,
but I believe that page is in there.
They're
okay,
at the back of the 6A thing,
okay.
with all those pictures of,
No,
it's the 6.
I know I put the capital page on. Hold
Oh,
on.
no, I mean, Don's, the notes.
Oh, no, wait, the detail is not attached to it.
That's okay.
So, no, I'll just add here, I need to,
Okay,
get the detail for the capital. It's a 1-page document. I'll email that out tomorrow.
Okay,
okay.
right, so this is all that.
1 page isn't too bad to print.
I could even print that.
Okay.
All right.
All right, moving. Is there anything, I know there's, didn't you have a transfer?
Yeah, we kind of jumped from 1 to 3 because we thought Katie needed to leave, but
Oh,
that's
that's
okay.
all right.
So yeah, there are transfers.
Okay. That's in this, in the.
Um,
There's. the
yeah.
capital budget stuff.
No, it's not.
Oh, all right.
No.
I just saw. it
There's
in-
there's two transfers. They are both payroll related.
Okay. It looks like this is in the middle of the package. Okay. And. Can you explain it?
Sure. Sure, okay, the first one was something that we had discussed in,
A year ago.
yeah, we had discussed it in June or July after the budget was approved, because
Okay.
I was remote for that meeting. And that's why I remember. It would be moving $15,953 from contingency to the line for the human services assistant. And that was because of a status change from part-time to full-time. And the second transfer is moving $3,604 from certified increases to the town clerk's part-time and full-time assistant lines due to the two of them, the two individuals passing their certification exams.
Mhm. Okay.
We had planned for that. That's why we had put money in certified increases so that we could accommodate individuals that furthered their education and received certification.
Okay. All right, so could I have a motion for the first one for the transfer from contingency to the line for the human services assistant?
I'll move that.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you.
Is that where we plan to take the money from?
Yes, that is where we had planned to take the money from.
This person has been working, and when the budget was initially adopted, there was only a half-time person funded.
And, this position is still needed for full-time going forward? I mean,
Oh, we can discuss that next week,
okay,
right?
but here they're asking for the budget for the remainder of the year.
We have,
Yes.
yes.
That is for the remainder of
I
this
don't
year.
know where those sheets are. I'm gonna look at yours.
Hmm?
I don't know if the sheet is.
It's
Too
in
much paper.
here. It's in the agenda. Kind of halfway through or more.
Yeah.
After all those,
Before the picture.
Just
After all the Elm City stuff?
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and then after some
After the-
spreadsheets and before the low sip and pictures.
Okay.
Here it
So as
is.
soon as you come to the pictures, you're 2 pages away. Keep flipping, pictures, look for pictures.
Here you go, right here.
All right.
This is, the one on the left is where we are
Okay.
now. All right, I have a motion from
Next time you should use colored
Was-
paper.
Katie and
Katie
then I
and,
second.
and Martha seconding it. All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that passes with everyone voting in favor. The second one, the certified increase, again, we put this line in the budget in case, you know, on the assumption that they would get their certification, they each did. Could I have a motion to, thank you, Sally moved, anyone second? Katie seconded. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so everyone voted in favor of that. All right, now, your LoSiP, is that the next thing?
Yes,
Okay, where, oh, it's at the bottom of,
well, yeah, because we're going to skip over B, the informational items.
we're gonna deal with them next week,
Well,
right?
and the audit really is in the home stretch, guys. It is. Grants. So yes, the next thing up is a motion to approve up to $15,000 for the center station repairs as outlined in the Public Works budget presentation, which is to replace the Bilco doors, an oil tank, seal off probably the basement vault, which
That is just such a disgusting mess. Well, just saying. Okay, so this will, LoSiP just requires that it be an approved capital project. And it's within our, we will not be paying for it, we already have the money for it. We just have to approve it as a capital project.
Does it have to go on the town meeting? Because
It's
it's,
under 20,
that's what I thought. Okay.
yeah,
All right, so I'll move.
okay.
Okay.
All right, so, Jen, it was Sally making the motion and Katie seconding. Any discussion? Well, she didn't see it. At the, this,
I looked through it in the email.
isn't it lovely?
And just for
Yeah,
the
it
minutes.
seems like center station and the annexes are endless money pits.
Aren't they? Oh.
It says like to do that.
Okay.
It's a good place for a field trip.
You never went to
Oh, the building next door.
the building next
Dubai?
door to buy them.
Oh, that building? Is that
Mm.
creepy look? I mean, to
Oh,
drive
re-
by it, it's creepy.
It's incredibly disgusting. After this meeting is over, we could, Paul and I
What's
could
that about
share.
it? Yeah. Be the highlights.
The ceiling had fallen in.
So leave it at that for now.
Yeah, leave it at that for now. Well, we can say, and lots of creatures had made their home in it.
Oh,
Okay,
There's
so
a house like
we
that on my
have,
street.
we have a motion, we have a second, any additional? All right, those in favor? Aye. Okay, so that's taken care of. And moving on.
We're already on the back sheet.
Thankfully. Okay. Now the annex one,
Yes, that would be moving on to item number 8.
which is the next set of characters, isn't it?
Right. Which is, we're looking for a motion to approve $10,000 for annex repairs without the office component, as outlined in the Public Works budget presentation, utilizing funds in the capital plan designated for the annex. I left the proposal as Don gave it to us at the 15,000, but he said to take out the partitions in that one room was probably somewhere between $5,000 and $6,000. That's what the cost for that part would be, which is why the motion is for 10,000 as opposed to the 15,000 on his
Okay.
proposal.
Because of the adding the walls, the internal walls, okay.
Correct.
All right, could I have a motion? So that we can discuss that. Okay, Katie, and do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Martha, thank you. Okay, discussion. Look at these pictures. The supervisors need supervision.
Yeah,
They sure do.
using duct
That's
tape on it.
ridiculous, because it was all fixed
It was
before they
all
took it over.
Brand clean.
Except for the janitor part.
Yeah, except for the part.
How do we know that?
Oh, I saw
I think
that
it's-
several years ago. I mean, like 10 years ago, I saw that. When the first time they renovated the annexes for parking.
Yeah, Don said that when he went in there, it wasn't like that. But yeah.
Why are we painting all interior walls except the hallway and the bathrooms?
Because they're already done.
Oh, they didn't,
Everything was done.
right, so they didn't destroy the bathrooms or the hallway?
No.
They weren't allowed to hang anything there.
Just
Okay.
duct tape.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, there's this like putty stuff that you take out a little bead, squish it on, stick it on the wall and stick whatever you want to it. And then it just peels right off.
Mhm.
It's like silly putty almost.
You don't
But-
have to use duct tape by now.
No, I mean, I never used tape or staples or thumbtacks or anything. I used that because it didn't leave a whole bunch of holes.
Well. Okay.
First aid tape, not the
means the-
paper tape.
I know. Well,
These were just counselors with minimal oversight,
kids
sticking up what they use them, they have.
and, right, they did, I mean, we can't blame them for not having the right supplies and we can't.
Or instructors.
On the other hand.
They wouldn't do it to their house.
Right, they wouldn't be allowed to do that.
They wouldn't, you're right.
Yeah.
But then there might have been an alternative. Exactly. Right, like painter's tape.
Mm.
Anyway, those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Lars, you okay?
Yes.
Yeah,
it's,
okay. All right, so that one again passes with everyone voting for it. We're doing it. Well, we are.
Okay.
All right, I have nothing really to add, about Amity and in terms of the budget, obviously, it's time to take a deep breath and actually get into it. And so we
What
will,
about the budget? Is it We also budget at 100% and things like that. Do we have to budget that way? Can
We
we,
don't budget at
for
100%.
staffing at 100% or?
We don't
No?
usually,
Okay.
unless somebody's already in the position,
Mm-hmm.
then, yeah, we budget to pay them. If somebody isn't,
Yeah.
you know, like, if a position is vacant or something, we don't. We budget usually for less, right? Don't we pay less? Based
Well-
on when we think the hire might happen?
Correct. We will budget based off of when we anticipate the hire happening. A position that we create that we anticipate being able to fill on July 1st or in the month of July, we budget for the full year. And where you find savings is when it doesn't materialize. You know, for 6 months out of the year.
Mhm.
And if it's a full-time position, you usually end up budgeting benefits at a family rate, because you don't know if the person's coming in.
Oh, yeah, the insurance.
Requiring
benefits.
for benefits.
Yeah, the insurance, we do budget. Based off of full staffed at family.
Okay, we need to.
Look
We
at
can
that.
discuss this next
Yeah.
week, but we need to be looking at that, and other things. We just need to look at everything,
Yeah.
because even though we have a significant surplus from, it looks like, from 2024, it also looks like it's all been taken up before we even start looking at our budget by lost revenue,
Yeah. For various reasons.
for various reasons. Yeah, it's just, it's pretty, but that's a scary amount of money to have, like, just almost vaporize.
But I mean, I do believe that the residents have a reason to be concerned.
Mm.
I mean, they're reducing debt spending by 1.3 million, but
Oh, you're talking about
yeah,
Amity.
about Amity, and the budget they're saying is going up 1.7. But they're shifting that 1.3 to operational,
Mhm.
so they're really going up 3 million.
5.5% is the actual increase in operational
Yeah.
costs. Yeah,
They make it so that the people that aren't familiar with budget terms say, oh, it's a, you know.
unfortunately, not enough people become educated on it and vote, and as long as.
Mhm.
the
And if
vote go-
Orange likes the budget, we don't have a fighting shot anyway.
Oh, Orange doesn't like.
Oh, then we might have a shot.
And to Sharon's point earlier, it becomes a ripple effect.
Mm.
They add that $3 million in this year. What are they gonna add next year?
And then when they start bonding and
And adding in,
contract.
adding back in that 1.5 or $2 million a year for debt service.
Well,
She skimmed over that.
it's what?
She skimmed over that.
Actually,
And-
shouldn't.
And they got a little defensive.
No, yeah, very,
They,
very.
there's a rationale for the way they budget.
Mm,
And like Katie's right, if
yeah.
I could. All right, where are we?
Number 10
The first selectmen's
would be
report.
Just a couple of quick things. I was on a couple of meetings this week stressing the municipalities' concerns about the lost revenue from the state.
Mhm.
And I was actually on a call 8 o'clock yesterday morning with Betsy Garrett from Cost, another town manager from Killingly, and then Senator Gordon, who's on the committee for the veterans exemption piece,
Mhm.
and talking about the legislation that needs to be corrected so that it says 100% totally disabled.
Oh, yeah,
To
that little.
take away the ambiguity and the confusion that's
Yes.
happening
Mhm.
across the state. So, and then Betsy is putting together some testimony to submit on behalf of the municipalities showing those concerns. And I actually asked her to add that besides this unfunded mandate, besides other ones we have, the loss of revenue that's, happening across other areas that are also having a major impact with town's budgets and everything, so.
Yes.
So she's gonna be submitting that testimony on behalf of the cost, small towns,
Okay,
so. That's all I have right now, just wanted to kind of update you on that.
okay. thank you. All right, Leslie, do you want to deal with any of the controls and sustainability issues, or should we move on to the next topic?
I think we should move on to 12.
Okay, then,
What I will do is, we will note the time.
all right, well, first, we're going to need a motion to go into executive session. And then we'll have the vote, and who do we have?
I will mute the audio, I will mute the video and pause the recording.
Okay, all right, so could I please have a motion to move to executive session to address item 12 on the agenda for the purpose of discussing personal duties and scope of work with the town as the administrative assistant to the first selectwoman and HR administrator, and possible creation of additional positions to assume some of the current responsibilities. Could I have a motion to that effect? Thank you, Sally. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Katie. Those in favor?
I-
The time noted is 8:32.
All right, so at 8:32. To continue the statement about going into executive session, the executive session is going to include the members of the Board of Finance, the finance director, the first selectman, and the HR administrator / assistant to the first selectman. Okay,
All good?
all good. Mhm.
Back.
Okay, we have returned from executive session, and we're going to postpone item 13 and any other business until a special meeting that we're planning for next Tuesday, where we will have the budget.
Is it a budget
Or it was a workshop?
workshop or is it a special meeting?
Oh,
I thought it was a workshop.
it was going to be a workshop. It can still be a workshop. I don't think we're going to come to a resolution on this one in
Right,
or in one night.
right.
Okay, is that?
So the workshop.
Are we good?
Yes. Okay.
All right, so the workshop will be next Tuesday, and 6 to 8:30, maybe possibly 9, absolutely no later. And
It started at 8 o'clock and now somehow we've ended up at 9. It's not.
it's life. Life is like that when you're trying to get a budget put
I know.
together, right?
Just kidding.
And this is not like the year where we were meeting twice a week for hours and hours and hours and all sitting here. going,
Lars put
"Ugh."
us that
Or
on.
when we did the
Ready to
budget by
adjourn?
pen and paper.
Yeah. Well,
That was
that's what I'm
always a
talking
fun
about.
one.
Anyway, we are, I would like a motion to adjourn.
You got it.
Okay, all right, so Jen, it was Sally making the motion and seconding it, all in favor.
Aye.
And thank you, everybody, if anyone's still out there.